A lot of storylines in the 2025 college football national championship game between the Miami Hurricanes and the Indiana Hoosiers. The biggest of which is the freaking Hoosiers went undefeated and won the NATTY. Not in basketball, in football. This is QB Unfiltered, my take, the 2025 national championship game. It was exciting in the fourth quarter, but for the most part, this game was not pretty.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up.
Wow. So Indiana wins the college football national championship 27-21 over the Miami Hurricanes to go 16-0 for the season. In today's video, I'm going to analyze both quarterbacks, Fernando Mendoza and Carson Beck. I have a few observations about the game, and I'm going to give you my 2 cents on my boy Kirk Herbstreit. As always, please like and share out this video. You know, if you stumbled across this show today, if this is your first time to the channel, that's awesome. You need to know that I've been in the doghouse with YouTube for the last couple of weeks. Has to do with copyright stuff, with the game clips that I provide for you guys. If anybody out there has any advice for me on how I can get by the copyright issues with the game clips, if anybody knows of an app I can use that can allow me to show these games like an all 22 format, which I'm going to do today, talk about that more in a bit, please let me know in the comments. And if you enjoy my content today or anytime, subscribe to the channel QB Unfiltered. I greatly appreciate the support. Okay, let's start it off with my boy Kirk Herbstreit. You know, I'm convinced that his knowledge about offensive football and the passing game specifically is extremely limited. In fact, every time he does the game, he is a walking, breathing, talking points guy. And he has the same for every game. And most of those are tired and old. You know, just one time I like Herbstreit to look into the camera and tell the viewing audience what the mystical and magical powers are for a team that defers when they win the toss to the second half. Spoiler alert here, there are no mystical and magical powers to deferring to the second half. When a team does that, what they're saying is they don't have a whole hell of a lot of confidence in their offense. They'd rather put their defense on the field first, and receiving the ball to start the second half doesn't give the team an extra possession. It doesn't do anything for anybody. It just means that one team is going to receive the second half kickoff. But, you know, this is one of Herbstreit's go-to talking points in every game he does. But if Herbstreit's got a guy talking to him in his earpiece, he really needs to think about getting a different dude, because every time in this game where Fernando Mendoza was either sacked or flushed out of the pocket, Herbstreit said it was a result of Miami teeing it up and bringing pressure, when in fact 95% of the time it was Indiana botching their pass protection and Miami coming with a 4-man rush. Okay, now I've said this multiple times on this channel. The 2 fastest ways to lose a football game is to commit selfish, dumbass 15-yard personal fouls and have sloppy special teams play. That punt block touchdown by Indiana was a brutal example of this. The Hoosiers were in safe punt on that return, meaning they weren't bringing the house trying to block the punt. They were setting up for a punt return. That was a big play, obviously, in this game, and it should have never happened, and that's a shame for Canes fans. Okay, so I've got a statement to make and then a question for you guys. My statement is this: the referees this year, noticeable, the referees in college football are changing the way the game is played, and that's not a good thing. They refuse to call holding. It doesn't matter whether you're a receiver that's stalking out on the perimeter and has 2 handfuls of cloth out there, DB cloth. It doesn't matter if you are an offensive lineman that has a defensive lineman in a chokehold, taking him down to the ground. And what's really brutal, because it's so obvious, it's out in the open for everybody to see, is they are allowing this season defensive backs to physically maul receivers. That fundamentally changes the way the game is played, and it screws up the passing game big time. My question to you guys is, why do you think that is happening? It is happening. Why do you think that is? You know, it's the same bullshit that has ruined the NBA, where the officials the last few years are allowing these players to take 4, 5, and 6 steps on their drive to the hoop and not calling traveling. That fundamentally changes the way the game of basketball is played. They're doing the same thing in football. Lastly, you know, in a couple of really bad looks for college football in Miami, you got Mark Fletcher throwing a punch after the game at an Indiana player. That's a bad look, regardless of what was said, what wasn't said, whatever. You just don't do that. That's a bad look. You know, and speaking of the Fletcher deal after the game, I've seen some pontificators and gurus on YouTube talking about, yeah, maybe we should just have it in football now where the losing team just walks off the field because you just can't control those high emotions like that. To which I say that's a load of bullshit. And there's no way that that's going to happen or should ever happen. Control your emotions, control yourself, act accordingly, represent, and get your butt off the field. Okay, and then we've got another bad look, and that was Carson Beck just walking off the field after the game instead of going across and shaking Fernando Mendoza's hand. He just left the field. It's resume stuff. It's like the dude that shows up at the Heisman Trophy and says, F the Heisman voters, or the guy that shows up for NFL interviews with front office people wearing his baseball cap sideways, beats on his head, listening to music and having an attitude. That stuff just never, ever, ever helps yourself. So bad decision by Carson Beck, and that was pretty disappointing to see. Let's move on to the game now. The two quarterbacks statistically. Carson Beck was 19 for 32 for 232 yards and that one touchdown pass. Okay, that little flip forward to Tony on the jet sweep. And of course, he had that one really bad pick to end the game. Fernando Mendoza was 16 for 27 for 186 yards, 0 touchdown passes, and 0 picks. Now, to summarize the two quarterbacks, Carson Beck did not play very well, in my opinion. He did not play very well. And I've got the video to prove it. His decision making, his eyes, his head, his reluctance to throw the ball to guys that are wide open, him refusing to go through his read progressions, his forcing throws, his throwing balls that were just wish throws. He was wishing that they would drop in complete. Plus, you know, he was back to having bad body language again. Okay. He does not handle adversity well. Okay. Now, Mendoza, you know, a lot of knocks about Mendoza is he doesn't go through progression reads. He has one receiver reads, this, that, and the other. He doesn't throw the ball well on the run. Right. That's why I was saying if Miami let him stay in the pocket and throw in rhythm, they were going to be in trouble. Now, as far as the read progression stuff, and I'm going to show you today on video, I'm going to talk about the all 22 video here in a second. This is a pass offense where a lot of the balls he throws are isolation throws to a predetermined receiver. And I want you to think back shoulder fades to an outside receiver or slot fade or slot verticals versus man coverage. They run those a lot when they need big completions. They ran those in this game, and, you know, Mendoza can throw those back shoulder fades in his sleep, and he made 2 big back shoulder throws in the fourth quarter. But what Indiana requires him to do, he does well. What Miami needed to do to knock the hell out of him, to harass him, and to get him out of rhythm and make him throw on the run, they accomplished that in the first half. Now, with Mendoza, I don't think he got much help from his receivers. Elijah Surratt, who's a guy that I've said all year long is a man playing with boys, just looked like he didn't show up for this game. He was just a non-entity out there. Okay, Cooper, the other talented receiver, not much from him. And you take away those 2 back shoulder fades to Charlie Becker, you didn't get much production out of him either. So, you know, I'm not sure that Fernando Mendoza got a whole lot of help from his receiving crew in this game. And it came down to him making 3 huge plays in this game. The 2 back shoulder fades and the QB draw. Okay, so before we get into the clips, I got to tell you that I got a hold of some all 22 film, which is going to be really cool to show you guys. The one good thing about all 22 is you get to see the entire route structure and concept. You get a great feel for the quarterback's read progression ability and if he's going to the right guy or not. The bad thing about all 22 video is you get to watch the entire route concept and you get to watch the quarterback's read progression. And like I said, it wasn't pretty for most of the game for Carson Beck. And I also think it showed how elementary Indiana's pass offense is. Okay, let's get into the clips. All right, moving on. Here's the first example of Carson Beck not seeing what is happening in front of him, not seeing the coverage structure, not anticipating throws, or just simply not playing catch. Second quarter, it's 2nd and 9. Miami's in an empty / bunch right, and Indiana's in a really tight 30 front. They ran this 30 front. It was kind of funky where they would have a head up nose guard on the center and then 2-3 techniques or almost in the gaps between the guard and the tackles, and the tackles would basically be uncovered. So they're in that tight 30 front and they've got 2 linebackers in the box. Both of them slid over to Beck's right side, and I think that they're in quarter half coverage, which is 2 zone to the half side, and quarter is basically a real loose man-tight deal the other way, quarter half. All right, now Miami's running Tony on an option route to Beck's left. The outside receiver to that side takes an outside release vertical, just exactly the way you draw it up, because that widens the corner, creates space for Tony, and it clears him out with the vertical. Look at all that grass that Tony has outside on that option route. Beck executes somewhat of a GST, which is good. He's ready to get the ball out of his hand on time. This is an easy read for any quarterback. It's easy to see. It's easy to throw. But Beck holds the ball and doesn't throw it to Tony. I don't know why. And, you know, all of these critiques I have of Carson Beck, I am not in Miami's quarterback room. I'm not sure what Shannon Dawson tells his quarterbacks on reads. I'm not sure. I just know that Beck's keying Tony on this thing, and Tony's wide ass open with a shitload of grass to play in, and Beck doesn't throw him the ball. Instead, he snaps his eyes to the backside. There's this little stick route sitting there all by himself. Beck dumps it to the stick, and he gets an easy 6 or 7 yard gain. Now, Carson Beck did this more than once in this game. Okay, guys, this is how close Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner and Indiana's dude, came to getting his knee blown out in the second quarter. It's second quarter, 3rd and 13. Indiana's in a 2-by-2 formation. Miami's in an eagle 1 up. Okay, 4-man front. You got a 1 linebacker up over the uncovered guard standing on the line of scrimmage. I want you to notice how wide the 6 techniques are here, Mesidor and Bain. See how wide they are? Why are they doing that? Well, you may be asking yourself, why do they do that? Because lined up that wide, they put themselves further away from the launch point, which is the quarterback at the end of his drop. Well, the reason they're doing that is because those guys are such phenomenal athletes for their size that by putting them out there that wide, they give themselves a running start at that offensive tackle and a chance to pick up speed and use their speed, and they're way faster than those offensive tackles. And it's a total mismatch when those guys are lined up that wide. That must be a scary sight for Indiana's tackles to see those 2 dudes lined up like that. Hand down on the ground, all the weight on the fingers in the ground, their ass up in the air. They don't care about the run game. They're coming at the QB on the snap. Okay, so Miami shows a cover 2 pre-snap, but on the snap of the ball, they play cover 3, and they do it in a really unique way. They dive both safeties down to the curl area, and they take the slot defender to Mendoza's left, and they jet him back through center field, the deep middle third. That is a totally unique way to run cover 3. They also drop the 3 technique over the guard. So this is a 3-man rush, and Hoosier fans got really lucky on this play. Again, Indiana is running a cover 3 killer, which is 2 seam verts, but Miami has this taken away. They're dropping 8 guys into coverage. Those guys are getting a lot of depth, plus the 2 safeties that come down to curl are basically sitting right there in the way of those seam verticals. And on the snap of the ball, both offensive tackles get run by. Okay, Bain, coming from Mendoza's right, grabs him by the shoulder pad and starts to knock him off balance. Mesidor, who's coming from Mendoza's left, as he clears that tackle, the tackle starts to push him down to the ground, and Mesidor now falls into Mendoza's knee, the side of his knee, as that ball is coming out of his hand. This is a scary situation. It's a 3-man rush. 2 guys don't get touched. One of those guys almost takes Mendoza's knee out. It wasn't a dirty play. It wasn't a dirty hit. That's why the quarterbacks get paid the big bucks. And that's why one of the reasons why this is the toughest position to play in all of sports. You're focusing on all this stuff you've got to do in your head and with your eyes, and you don't know where the hits are coming from, and you make your living by being healthy, and you got guys that are falling, diving, whatever, into the sides of your knee. That's a scary deal. And Mendoza saw the ball sail over the seam vertical over his head and probably took a big sigh of relief and picked himself up off the field. Okay, so since I've already ranted about the PI and the DB's holding, I'll just say that the action by the DB on this play, on Cooper, 100% changed the outcome of the play. And there was no flag. It's 4th quarter. It's 3rd and 5. Indiana's in trips right. Miami's in an eagle 2, and they're showing cover 0, but they play on the snap cover 1, which is man free. So you've got the safety to the single receiver side that's jetting back now through the deep middle. And this is an Indiana staple versus man coverage. They'll line up in either a slot formation or a trips formation and take a inside receiver and basically clear everybody out and just run him one-on-one on a slot vertical. And that's what they're doing with Cooper right here. So Cooper's lined up to the right side, the trip side. He's the number 2 receiver. Number 1 to trips is running a hitch. Number 3 is running an out route. Those 2 guys are just staying out of the way of the play. The backside receiver, the single receiver, is running a stop route. Cooper has the one-on-one vertical route, and Mendoza executes a GST, which is the way to do it because this is a bang-bang throw. All right. You don't want the ball in the air a long ways. This is as soon as he clears that slot defender, zip it in there. Cooper has a great release here. He doesn't take the generic outside release bullshit that most receivers do when they're running verticals. He inside releases, which puts him in the driver's seat right off the bat, and he's running by this DB. Now, this is a perfect scenario for Mendoza and Indiana because Miami is playing cover 1, but the safety that's going to end up in center field starts outside the hash on the opposite side of where Cooper's running that vertical. So this safety has no chance to get in on the play. Now, as Cooper's running by the slot defender, that guy reaches out, grabs Cooper by the back of the jersey, and stretches cloth. Now, in the old days, like 2 years ago, that was an easy call, an easy penalty. Anytime that you see jersey stretched, that is a hold. And that's exactly what is happening here. Let me explain to you how severely this screws up the route and the quarterback. Okay, Cooper, who's normally probably a 4-5 guy, he's not a 4-9 guy, right? Mendoza knows that Cooper's a 4-5 guy. He throws to him every day in practice, all off season. He knows how fast Cooper is, Surratt is, Becker is. So let's say Cooper's a 4-5 guy and Mendoza's throwing that slot vertical to a guy that's running 4-5. Except when the referee allows Miami's DB to grab cloth, Cooper now goes from 4-5 to 4-9. that has a tendency to really screw up the quarterback, and the ball is going to sail over the receiver's head. Fundamentally changes the way the passing game is executed. So this is a great call by Shanahan, the OC. This is a great release by Cooper, and it's all wasted. Indiana missed out on a touchdown here, and Zippo is called. No penalty, no rag, no holding, no PI. Brutal. Okay, that takes us to Fernando Mendoza's best throw of the game. And what a ballsy call by Shanahan and Cignetti. Fourth quarter, 4th and 5. Indiana's in trips right with the number 3 receiver being in a wing. They've got a single receiver to the left. Miami is in an Eagle 2 front and playing cover 1 man free. Now, Shanahan does 2 really smart things here. Number 1, he goes with Mendoza's best throw. I've said this all season long. Fernando Mendoza can throw back shoulder fades with a blindfold on at 3 o'clock in the morning, walking out of a bar in Bloomington, Indiana, whatever. He is automatic throwing these balls. So you go to what your QB does best if you're going to throw the rock, even though I think the back shoulder is one of the most difficult throws for a quarterback to make. It's right in Fernando Mendoza's wheelhouse. The second thing that Shanahan does that is smart is how they pass block this. So on the snap of the ball, they take their entire offensive line and do a full 5-man slide to the left. So they're going to slide it to the left, get Mesidor taken care of with the tackle, maybe a little bit of help from that left guard. And then they're going to take the wing who's lined up to the right and the running back lined up to the right, and they're going to double Bain. Smart. Okay. This assures now that Mendoza is going to have the time to deliver the ball the way he wants to deliver it from the pocket. Now, one thing that Fernando does on these back shoulder fades, which I don't get, I don't think it's needed, is he glances off or looks off the free safety, which is not needed. That free safety is not ever going to be involved on a back shoulder fade to the sideline. So I think that Mendoza needs to have his eyes on his receiver the entire way, but this is built into what they do. He does it every time he throws a back shoulder fade, at least in this game versus one safety high. He was always glancing that safety off and then coming back and throwing. So he takes his normal 4-step drop, his normal hitch step, his normal pat the ball, and then he dimes this back shoulder throw to Charlie Becker, who makes a great catch on this. This is a 19 or 20 yard gain. Huge play. 4th and 5. This is one of Mendoza's 3 iconic plays in this game. And that sets the stage now for one of the most iconic plays probably for the next, 100 years in college football. The quarterback draw that Fernando Mendoza stuck in the end zone. And again, what a ballsy call and decision by head coach Curt Cignetti. It's 4th quarter. It's 4th and 5 again. Now, Cignetti's taking his time thinking about what he's going to do. Right? Thinking. Then he pulls his offense off, brings his field goal team on, continue to think about it, says, screw it. We didn't come this far not to play aggressive, calls timeout, puts his offense back in, and they go with the QB draw. Okay. Indiana's in a 2-by-2 formation. Miami's in an Eagle 1, cover 0, and they're bracketing Charlie Becker on this play. Indiana takes their 4 receivers and basically just widen them to the sideline to take Miami's secondary out of the play. So the 2 outside receivers are running hitches and the 2 slot receivers are running outside release fades to the outside to the sideline. All right, on the snap, the running back has got the middle linebacker, and it's a key block, okay? But the initial key block to this whole thing, this whole sequence, is the left guard and the center for the Hoosiers. They have to turn that shaded nose guard to Indiana's right, which opens the lane for Mendoza on the draw. So the left guard is going to quickly show and punch that nose guard to stop him and allow the center to take over the block. And then that left guard is downfield looking for work. Now the center has got to position himself and get that nose guard sealed or turn to the right because Mendoza's coming inside of that to the left side of the center. Now they could have easily called holding on the center on this play. All right. And we'll leave that there. Mendoza executes a GST and then does 3 really impressive things. Number 1, as he gets down to that little collision intersection there with the blockers and the defensive guys, he cuts right and steps over his falling center, and around the same time simultaneously bounces off the middle linebacker and the safety coming in, okay, to make a hit on him. And at the 5-yard line, I didn't notice this in the game, but I noticed it watching the All-22 film. As he spun around, he put his right hand down on the ground to maintain his balance and push himself back upright to continue on. And then thirdly, he launched himself from about the 3.5 yard line, both hands on the ball as he's sailing through the air into the end zone for the touchdown. That's a 24-14 lead and a great call, ballsy call, great execution and determination and grit by Mendoza to get it in the end zone. And now, not great execution from Carson Beck. It's 4th quarter. It's 1st and 10. Miami's in trips or a bunch left with a single receiver to the right who's down in a condensed split. They motion Tony from left to right to the outside receiver. Indiana's in that tight 30 front with double 3 techniques on the guards, and they take their 2 inside linebackers and they widen them out over the tackles, and they're playing a cover 2. Now, the Canes are running a fake punch screen to Tony with that slot receiver faking a stock block on the corner and then wheeling it up on the vertical. On the backside, they've got a hook route in the box by the wing. The outside receiver to the left's running a curl route, and the running back is going to release to the right of Beck, past the line of scrimmage, and run a shallow cross back to the left and underneath that backside curl. And I'll come back to the shallow cross curl in a second. Okay, so the first thing on this play is Carson Beck tips that this is not a punch screen. This is a poor ball fake, okay? A poor fake screen throw. And the other thing that he does is he gets into his shuffle way too quickly, okay? Everything that he's doing with his action here is telling that cornerback to Tony's side that they are not throwing a punch screen. Now, you got to remember that corner's in a zone drop. So not only can he see what Tony's doing, he can see what that receiver is doing that's coming at him. He can also see what Beck is doing. And if you're doing anything that doesn't look like punch screen to the cornerback, he's going to say bullshit, and he's going to continue to get depth and take away that vertical route, which he does. Okay, and Beck sees this and snaps his eyes to the backside, and now here's where the breakdown comes. I don't know if he's looking hook first, then outside to the curl, or if he's just coming back and looking curl. What you've got going with this route concept on the backside is a triangle. Hook, curl, shallow cross. It's a triangle, okay? And in reality, what you have is a high-low stretch with the curl and the shallow cross. So if that play side fake screen vertical is taken away, you just snap eyes to the backside. And if you're glancing at the hook, if he's there, you pop it. If not, you work outside of that high-low. Carson Beck does not allow the high-low stretch to happen. He is not patient enough to allow that running back to clear that hook defender out of the way of the curl guy who's standing all by himself. This ball should have been thrown to the curl route for a first down. Beck's got all day to look around because for some reason Indiana is doing a 3-man mush rush with their D-line. I don't get that. But with Beck, his head and eyes, he goes right to left, back to the right, and then back to the left, where now the curl route has turned into, I'm just going to find some grass. The game is over with the high-low stretch on the curl shallow cross. And now Beck has to try to force lob a throw into that grass receiver where he's got to lob it over the underneath coverage and drop it in front of the safety coming outside. It's got no chance to be complete, and it is incomplete. So here's another example of poor execution by Carson Beck on a play that really should have been a completed ball on the curl route for a first down. A lot of bad things happening by number 11 on this snap. Okay, and then one more from the category of Carson, what are you doing? It's fourth quarter. It's 1st and 10. They're on Indiana's 22-yard line, and Miami's down 24-14. They're in a 2-by-2 formation. Indiana's in an eagle one. They line up in cover 0 and play cover 0, but they've got 3 underneath defenders that are dropping zone, but this is man behind that across the board. They also dropped the 6 technique to Beck's left on the snap. Now the Canes are running 2 hitch routes to Carson Beck's right against really loose man coverage. And as you can see, both of those hitches are wide open. Beck keys right, but doesn't throw the ball. And he then snaps his eyes to the backside where they've got an absolute cluster going on. So they've got a little stick route by Tony. The outside receiver's running a little mini curl route. So he's standing right next to Tony, and they're bringing the running back now on that shallow cross. So he's going to be standing next to the other 2 receivers. Beck disregards throwing the 2 open hitch guys to the right, who he initially keys, comes back and throws an incompletion. I believe he's throwing the ball to Fletcher on that shallow cross. And instead of playing catch to 2 wide open hitch routes, he throws an inaccurate ball to that backside train wreck, incomplete. All right, now this takes us now to the 3rd and final big play by Fernando Mendoza. It's 4th quarter, it's 3rd and 7. There's 3 minutes and 7 seconds to go, and Indiana's up 24-21. And Indiana is lined up in trips or a wing. The number 3 receiver is in a wing, trips right, with a single receiver to the left, and Miami's in a 32 with a ghost. I think that is Mesidor out there lined up in a ghost position with his hand down in the dirt, and they're playing cover 1. Now, one of the questions that I have on this play is why would you take, if that is Mesidor, why would you take one of your best 2 pass rushers and drop him into pass coverage on the snap of the ball? I don't get that, but that's exactly what they do here. And then it's 3rd and 7. You probably got a pretty good idea that Indiana's going to throw the ball, and you bring 3-man pressure with one of your best pass rushers dropping back into coverage. Okay, and just like they did the last time that they threw the back shoulder fade, they're running the full offensive line slide to the left. They're using the wing and the running back to double Bain with pass protection. This is really a smart scheme. You've got the left outside receiver on a vertical, number 2 to the trip sides on a deep crosser, number 1 to trip side, which is Becker, is running that back shoulder fade. In my opinion, this is an ISO play for Becker and Mendoza's only read, and why not? On the snap, just like the last back shoulder fade versus cover 1, Mendoza looks off the free safety. Not needed, in my opinion. Now, Becker's being mauled by the cornerback on this, and as we've already established, that's allowed to happen in this game. And as my boy Herbie says, they're just being handsy. No biggie. And no rag. Okay. Becker makes the grab for 20 yards and a huge first down. This isn't Fernando Mendoza's best throw of the game. This probably is one of his poorer back shoulder fades I've seen all year. He misses too much center. Okay. He doesn't put it nearly enough to the outside, but he puts it on Becker, who makes the play. First down, big first down, huge play. And that takes us to the last clip of this game, and that's the pick by Carson Beck, or the throw that should have never been made. It's 4th quarter. It's 1st and 10. There's 51 seconds to go in the game. The Canes are down 27-21. Now, at this time, I really felt that Miami had Indiana's defense on the ropes. As I said earlier, the tempo, the fast pace, I think Indiana kind of lost their mind defensively. They had some confusion out there. They had problems getting calls in, right? They played somewhat vanilla with their defensive approach. And I think Miami had them on the ropes. And then Carson Beck throws this ball that had no chance. So the Canes are in trips right, with the number 3 receiver being that wing, and they put the trips into the short side of the field, meaning their single receiver, the guy they're going to, is lined up to the wide side of the field with all that grass to work with. Now, Indiana's either in an eagle 1 up front or they're in a 31 up front. It's hard to tell. And this is a coverage that they ran in this game that looks like a cover 2 look to the single receiver and like a cover 3 to the 3 receiver side where they're taking 2 or 3 dudes and running that net bracket coverage on Tony. Now, this is a tagged play to Marion, the single receiver. Beck is going here the entire way, but he still has to read this out. Okay, so on the snap of the ball, Beck's eyes go left to Marion. That safety now starts to drop back straight and then turns and sprints outside, trying to stay over the top of Marion. That's a problem, but not as nearly as big a problem as this. The corner lets Marion go, but then sinks underneath and trails his route. Carson Beck has got to see this because the way they're playing it, Beck has to throw the ball flat to keep it away from that safety who's screaming outside. And in throwing it flat with that corner sinking underneath it, he can't get it over the top of that guy. There's no chance to put this ball in here. Now imagine what would happen if Carson Beck went, no, I can't do that. Snap my eyes to the backside, and there's Mr. Tony on that dig route. You put that ball on him in stride, wow, that could have been a different ending to this football game. And sadly for Canes fans, this throw, that decision was, in my opinion, a microcosm of how Carson Beck played in this game. And really, his whole season, up and down, up and down. Certain games he looked focused and dialed in. Other games he didn't look so focused and not so much dialed in. Okay, guys, so both quarterbacks aside, this is not Bobby Knight's Indiana anymore. It's not just a basketball school. You know, Indiana's season-long march towards the undefeated season and the national championship really began last season. That's when they started this thing. And when they hit the bricks running this year in game 1, they really looked like a team of destiny, well coached. They executed on both sides of the ball. They had good schemes. I thought that they underused Mendoza all year long, but what do I know? Just a magical year for Indiana. And getting Fernando Mendoza in the transfer portal, that was the secret sauce for the Hoosiers. Now, as far as the Canes go, the quarterback position next year obviously is huge. Wherever they're going to get this guy from, I don't know if they've got anybody coming up through the system, if they're going to go out in the portal, but they got to have a guy that is a dude. And I think this is a must for Miami on offense. They need to go get 2 receivers that can play on the outside, that can frickin' run, that can take the top off of coverages, that can run by and hurt corners in pressed man coverage and be playmakers so that they take the pressure off of Tony. That makes Tony's game even more explosive. All right, guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Did I get it right or did I get it wrong? This is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.